The Columbus Blue Jackets have just missed out on a playoff spot the last 2 seasons running, but how close are they to being an actual playoff team or even a cup contender? We discuss on today's Locked On Blue Jackets.
You're Locked On Blue Jackets, your daily podcast on the Columbus Blue Jackets, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, welcome to Locked On Blue Jackets, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I am, as always, your host, Jay Foster, here to give you the good, the bad, and the ugly about your favorite team and mine, the Columbus Blue Jackets. Got a lot to get into today. I thought it would be fun to take a look at the Athletic every year does these cup checklists, which we'll talk a little bit about what that is in more detail. But essentially, it's what players you need to be a contender, right? They looked at the last, I think, 10 to 15 Stanley Cup winners and mapped the average of like the best forward, the best defenseman, the best goalie, and like, right, what kind of numbers does a team need to have with their players for it to make a cup contender or a Stanley Cup winning team, right? So we're going to go through that. We'll take a quick look at like how the cup checklist works. We'll look at the Blue Jackets breakdown right now, and then we'll talk a little bit about like how far away is this team? What do they need to add? Like, is the answer coming from within, or do they need to go out and find someone else? Right, all of that stuff. So we'll start by just kind of breaking down what this Athletic Stanley Cup checklist is, and so I'm just going to read directly from the Athletic primer on it, which is basically, let me try and find out. Here we go. So basically, there's no exact formula for winning the Stanley Cup, but there are common elements between champions. The cup checklist was introduced 5 years ago, so we're going to update it. And what they've done now is they've accounted for roles. And so what they mean with that is that compare the way that they did it last time was they compared the wrong players due to position rigidity. So Nikita Kucherov was the best forward on both Lightning Cup teams and should be compared to other cup-winning best players, not just the best wingers. So if we go down, essentially what they've done is they've used Dom from the Athletic has his rating model, which gives you an offensive rating, a defensive rating, and a net rating. And, that gives you a number. It doesn't give you a number out of anything, but it gives you a number. And they've kind of looked and they've got, right, if you have this player reach this rating, then they are a franchise player, et cetera, et cetera. They've got 13 different roles for it. So for the Blue Jackets to be a cup contender, they need, I would say, maybe 8 to 10 of these roles. So they need a franchise forward, a star forward, a franchise defenseman, a shutdown forward, a star goalie. That's your elite core. Those are the 5 pieces that you need. You can win without all 5 of those pieces, but it's really great if you have all 5 of those pieces. And you've got your support core, which is a scoring forward, a scoring defenseman, a shutdown defenseman, and a support forward. And then you've got your depth core, which is an offensive forward, a defensive defenseman, a depth forward, and a defensive forward. So again, we'll break these down in a little bit more detail in a second. I know I'm throwing a lot of terms at you here, but essentially the best way to look at this right now, I think, is, or the easiest way to look at it is if you take the franchise defenseman, for example, which the Blue Jackets have a franchise defenseman in Zach Werenski, right? His rating this season was 19.2 overall, 16.7 offensive rating. For him to hit that cup checklist pass mark, or that cup checklist like tick box mark, he needs to have at least a 9.2. So it's looking pretty good there. For if you want your franchise defenseman to be a defensive defenseman, then 2.1 is, or if you want the defensive thing to hit for your franchise defenseman, they need to have a 2.1 rating, which I believe Zach Werenski has a 2.5. So he hits on both the offensive side of things and the defensive side of things for your franchise defenseman, which is great. And then you've got to fill the pieces in around that, right? So essentially what they're trying to do is, again, for example, you look at the Panthers that just won the cup, right? You've got your franchise forward, your star forward, your franchise defenseman, your shutdown forward, and your star goalie. Well, they've got all of those pieces, right? They've got Barkov, Kachuk, I believe Seth Jones was their franchise was marked as their franchise defenseman in terms of rating, which he passes, but not only just. Their shutdown forward was Sam Reinhart, and then their star goalie was Sergei Bobrovsky, right? Those are the 5 elite pieces of this core, and then you get into their support core, right? Your Anton Lundells, your Sam Bennett's, your Aaron Ekblad, your Brad Marchand, right? Going further down into the depth, you've got your Maki Samoskevich, you've got your Asa Lindell. No, they've got another Finnish guy, and I've completely forgotten the name. But the point I'm making here is they've got all of these pieces, right? And so how close are the Blue Jackets to these pieces? Well, that's where it gets kind of complicated, right? So if we go back and we look at go back and pull up the numbers here. So you want your franchise forward, which the Blue Jackets want that to be Adam Fantilli, right? Adam Fantilli has to be either your franchise forward or your star forward. Your star forward needs to have an offensive rating of 12.1. Your franchise forward needs to have a net rating of 16.6. That is on average what the last cup winners have had. So if we flip over to where Adam Fantilli and Kirill Marchenko are right now, because that's what you want, is you want Marchenko and Fantilli as the 1 and 2 forward pieces. Marchenko has an offensive rating of 8.8 and a net rating of 9.9. Adam Fantilli has an offensive rating of 6.2 and a net rating of 5.9. So, I'm not super great at math, but I don't believe that hits either of those things. So what did I say? So it's 16.6 for your franchise. Neither of them hit that. Star forward, offensive rating, 12.1. Neither of them hit that. Marchenko gets pretty close to that star forward rating. He's, I think, 3+3 off, but they haven't hit yet. So the Blue Jackets missing those 2 guys. Obviously, Zach Werenski comes in as your franchise defenseman. They don't have a shutdown forward. I know that a lot of people think that Abby Coyle is that guy. He's not at that. Like, when you say shutdown forward, they're talking about guys like Sam Reinhart, Brandon Hagel, Mitch Marner, right? You need someone to be elite on both ends of the ice, and in a way that Charlie Coyle, who is a very good third line center, just isn't, right? So I know instinctively you want to put Charlie Coyle in that shutdown forward role. He's not there. He is a depth piece. He is a support core piece. You've got your star goalie in Jet Graves. He had a 10.4 net rating this season. And I believe the goalie only needs to have a rating of 7.7. So great. If he can keep that up, Blue Jackets have 2 of those 5 really important pieces that they need. And again, I still maintain the hope is Adam Fantilli and Kirill Marchenko hit those next levels. Something I did want to talk about with regards to those 2 players specifically is they're listed here as, so Marchenko is a scoring forward and Adam Fantilli is a support forward. They both pass that bar pretty handily. Again, they're not at that upper echelon yet, but if Marchenko takes that step, he can very easily become a franchise forward or a star forward. Same with Adam Fantilli. There was a lot of talk in the article from Dom from The Athletic and then Aaron Porcelain did a little bit of a write-up for it, and they talked about how Fantilli and Marchenko aren't there yet and how they don't compare to, the duo of Seth Jarvis and Sebastian Aho in Carolina, for example. The duo of, again, Kachuk and Barkov in Florida, the duo of Kucherov and it probably would have been Stamkos at that point, or potentially Braden Point, that duo of superstar forwards. However, I would like to make a note that Kirill Marchenko is among the young core on this team. Kirill Marchenko is among the older guys there, and he's 25, right? In theory, this team core it's a bunch of young guys and then Zach Werenski, right? And then you've got some older pieces. Provorov's 29, Stevenson's 31, Monahan's 31, Coyle's 34, etc. But Werenski's 28, Greaves is 25, Marchenko 25, Matejchuk 21, Fantilli 21. Johnson didn't make this list. Voronkov's here, he's 25. It's a young group of guys, right? So the fact that Adam Fantilli is not rated as a franchise forward yet, or a star forward yet, I'm not like super worried about that. Just because I think then that's what he'll grow. Like that's what they need him to grow into. And again, he's 21 years old. Like, again, I keep going back to, I don't think he's going to turn into Nathan McKinnon. I don't think he's going to turn into the kind of player that has, 120, 140 point seasons regularly, but he plays the game in a very similar way. And it took Nathan McKinnon, I think he was 24 before he really exploded onto the scene. So, like, again, Adam Fantilli, 21. He'll be 22 when the season starts, I think. Like, not worried yet. So let's keep breaking this down. We'll take another break, and then we'll take a look at what they have kind of in that next level, because right now they're sitting at 2 out of 5 pieces, and that is Zach Werenski as your franchise defenseman and Jet Greaves as your star goalie. So we'll take a break, and then we'll talk about the support core that the Blue Jackets have right now here on Locked On Blue Jackets. First, I'm going to tell you about HIMS. ED is way more common than most guys think. Millions of guys deal with it at some point, and that's exactly why HIMS offers a straightforward way to handle it. They connect you with licensed healthcare providers online, giving you access to legitimate ED treatments from the comfort of your home. No awkward appointments, no pharmacy lines, just a straightforward process that makes it easier to take care of yourself. The whole process is super simple, right? All you got to do is complete a quick online intake, and a provider is going to review your information. If treatment's right for you, it's going to ship directly to your door in discreet packaging. The whole experience is going to be private and stress-free, straightforward, transparent, and designed to make getting care feel easy. To get simple online access to personalized, affordable care for ED, hair loss, weight loss, and more, visit hims.com/lockedonnhl. That's hims.com/lockedonnhl for your free online visit. hims.com/lockedonnhl. Prescription required. See website for details and important safety information. Sildenafil is the generic version of Viagra. Viagra is a registered trademark of Viatris Specialty LLC. Hims is not affiliated with or endorsed by Viatris. I've also got to tell you about Game Time. There's nothing like playoff hockey live, right? The intensity, the rivalries, the crowd, it is just different when you're in the building. Playoffs are some of the best moments in sports, and being there is something that every fan should experience. And Game Time is making it super easy to find tickets, even for this high-demand playoff games, in just a few taps. And with their Game Time guarantee, you know that you're getting 100% authentic tickets delivered on time at the best price. I use Game Time all the time when I'm in the States, right? I used it when I was in Montreal last month. I used it when I was or a couple of months ago now. I used it when I was in Montreal and Toronto back in the fall. I use it when I'm in San Jose. I used it when I was in Columbus. Like, I use it all the time. I love it. I think it's super easy to use. I think it's fast. Like, sometimes it's like literally 90 seconds from opening the app to buying tickets. You've got panoramic seat views. They've got zone deals, which is where you pick the section and Game Time picks the seats, and you save money on that. And they've got their lowest price guarantee as well. So if you find tickets in your section and row for less somewhere else, they will give you 110% of the difference. So with Game Time, I feel confident every single time I buy. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDON for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDON for $20 off. Download the Game Time app today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Welcome back to Locked On Blue Jackets. So we're talking about this Stanley Cup checklist that The Athletic has brought out. And just kind of summarize the first segment of the show. You need a franchise forward, a star forward, a franchise defenseman, a shutdown forward, and a franchise goalie. The Blue Jackets have 2 of those right now, but we are hopeful that they will fill out 2 more of those with Marchenko and Fantilli in the franchise and star forward categories. They still need a shutdown forward, like a Marner type or a Brandon Hagel type or a Sam Reinhart type. Like, basically, you need like a third elite forward, essentially. But the Blue Jackets, I think, have potential to have at least 2 out of the 3. So we move on. The second segment is the support core. So you need a scoring forward, a scoring defenseman, a shutdown defenseman, and a support forward. So kind of what I'm looking at here is I see the elite core as, your number 1 center, and then your number 1 winger, and then a third forward. So whether that's your second line center or your another top line winger, when you get to the support core, you need 2 more forwards, 2 more defensemen. And so to me, that says 2 second line forwards and probably your second and third best defenseman, depending on where you want to put them, right? So as of right now, the Blue Jackets have that support core listed as Kromachenko is your scoring forward, Adam Fantilli is your support forward, your scoring defenseman is Denton Matejchuk, and your shutdown defenseman as Ivan Provorov. I don't really like. We can quibble on like the terms for these. I don't really think Provorov is a shutdown defenseman. But according to Dom's model, he has a better defensive rating than Damon Severson, but not as good of a defensive rating as Matejchuk or Werenski. So he goes as their top four. He's got the second best defensive rating behind Zach Werenski. So he goes in the shutdown defenseman box for right now. I feel pretty good about having Matejchuk and Provorov there. I would love an upgrade on, like, I would love an actual shutdown defenseman so you can push Ivan Provorov into the defensive defenseman box that is in the depth core, but I feel pretty good about having Matejchuk as your number 2 defenseman. The problem becomes then, okay, right, you've got your scoring forward and your support forward of Marchenko and Fantilli right now. Well, you want them to move up, right? You want them to be your franchise and your star forward. So who do you put into the scoring forward and support forward boxes, right? You've got to fill kind of, you've got to kind of backfill it as you go. Obviously the hope is that, for example, potentially Kent Johnson and Dmitry Voronkov can fill those boxes. If Mason Marchment sticks around, he's a potential option for that scoring or support forward. Connor Garland is another option for depth as well. But, as of right now, they've got Marchenko and Fantilli in those spots, which is a fine place for them right now. But you've got to hope that they'll move up, right? Right now, it's looking pretty good, but if they move up, then you've got to kind of find who's gonna fill them. Portsline mentions Luca Del Belluz as an option in the depth or the support, who should be getting minutes in Columbus this upcoming season. The time to find out if he's a middle six winger or not. So again, I don't know that he fits into the support forward or scoring forward boxes, but again, if you fill those with, again, Dmitry Voronkov, who's currently in the 3rd tier, you bump him up, then there's a hole there for someone like Del Belluz to fit into, right? Again, you'd love Sean Monahan to have a bounce-back season and become one of those scoring forwards or support forwards, or I don't think he's a shutdown forward level anymore, like that elite core. But if you can get him from that depth core where he is right now into the 2nd-tier support core, again, that kind of backfills it in and makes it look a little bit more palatable. But as of right now, the support core, pretty good. That 2nd tier of player, Marchenko, Matejchuk, Provorov, Fantilli, pretty good, right? Again, I don't think I would love to have someone above Provorov because here's the thing, if you can have Provorov as your 4th most important defenseman, I feel pretty good about that, right? If we ignore the contract, if we ignore all of that, if you have Ivan Provorov as your number 4 defenseman, that's fine. He is a fine 4th defenseman. Right now, he's being played like he's a number 2. I'm hoping that, again, if Severson steps up and Matejchuk continues to step up, then Provorov will take some steps backwards in terms of ice time. But if Provorov is your 4th most important defenseman, I feel great about that. If he's your 2nd most important defenseman, as he was played this season, I feel less good about that. But as of right now, he's listed here as kind of essentially the 3rd most important defenseman for the Blue Jackets, which is one higher than I would like him to be, but is mostly fine. So overall, that 2nd tier is pretty good. Last thing is the depth core. So as of right now, they've got an offensive forward, a defensive defenseman, and then a depth forward and a defensive forward. And that's Voronkov, Severson, Monahan, and Coyle. Again, I feel good about this. I would love to be able to bump some of these guys up. Again, if you have the opportunity to move Charlie Coyle up to support forward, and then you can fill that in with someone like a Del Belluz or a Pucha or someone else as your defensive forward. I feel great about that. But as of right now, again, the Blue Jackets right now, I feel like this grades them out as a playoff team, right? They're missing that big 3 forward, 1, 2, 3 punch that, again, Florida has in Tkachuk, Barkov, Reinhart, right? That Tampa Bay had, that Colorado had, that, these cup winners have an elite top line. The Blue Jackets have a pretty good top line. It's not elite yet. And again, kind of scrolling through the other non-playoff teams and the teams that got pretty close to the playoffs and missed. So for example, the Islanders, I think, are a pretty good example because they finished just above the Blue Jackets in the draft lottery. Is they have They have a lot more holes. So they need 2 elite forwards. They've got Matt Barzal in their shutdown forward role right now, but you'd like to see him move up. You got Matthew Schaefer in the franchise defenseman. You got Sorokin in the star goalie, right? Like that's pretty good. They've got 3 out of 5, and then you get to the support core. They've got 2 big holes there. Their depth core, they've got a bunch of guys that are just kind of filling in, right? Like I think the Blue Jackets are in a much better situation than the Islanders. So here comes my question, which we'll talk about in the third segment here is, okay, here's where the Blue Jackets are right now. What do they need to add? What can they fill from within? What do they need to add from outside? And how likely is it that they need to add from outside? Let's take a quick break, and then we'll try and figure that out in just a second here on Locked On Blue Jackets. First, I want to tell you about Indeed. Workplace chaos, deadline stacking up, inbox overflowing, and the one position you have to fill is still sitting open. When the pressure is on and you need the right hire, this is a job for Indeed-sponsored jobs. Helps you reach the people who actually fit what you're looking for, skills, experience, locations. You are not just hoping that the right candidate stumbles across your post. And here's a stat that says it all. The minute that I've been talking to you, companies like yours have made 27 hires on Indeed, according to their worldwide data. So if you're hiring, spend less time searching and more time interviewing candidates who check all of your boxes with Indeed-sponsored jobs. Less stress, less time, better results. When you need the right person to cut through the chaos, this is a job for Indeed-sponsored jobs. And listeners of this show are going to get a $75 sponsored job credit to help get your job the premium status it deserves at Indeed.com/podcast. Just go to Indeed.com/podcast right now and support our show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions apply. Need to hire? This is a job for Indeed-sponsored jobs. Welcome back to Locked On Blue Jackets. Let's finish up here by just running down what we've done already and then looking at what the Blue Jackets need to add, right? So right now, they have got a franchise defenseman, a star goalie, a scoring forward, a support forward, a scoring defenseman, a shutdown defenseman, an offensive forward, a defensive defenseman, a depth forward, and a defensive forward. So of the 13 pieces that the cup checklist says that you need, and again, I don't think they're saying that you need all 13 of these pieces, but like these are the 13 pieces that you should aim for. They've got 10 of them. Unfortunately, the 3 that they're missing are 3. Like, and again, if you are weighting this, like they're missing 3 out of the top 5. And then they've got all 8 of the bottom 8. So, which is really, really Blue Jackets, if we're being honest. So they're, they are missing pieces. They need pieces to step up. What do they need to add, right? I think, and they need another top 6 forward. Whether Marchment stays or goes, they still need, I think, another guy. But so do 25 other teams in the league. They're looking for scoring up front. Even if you hope, even if Fantilli and Marchenko hit and become those franchise forwards and the star forward that you need, I don't know that they have someone to be that shutdown forward, that like third elite forward piece. Like again, in a perfect world, that becomes someone like Kent Johnson, right? Or potentially someone like Caden Lindstrom. I know that that's a dirty concept around here, but like they need an extra piece like that. And it sounds like Jason Robertson is going to be staying in Dallas, which I am unsurprised by, just because you make it work for good players, right? But there are other players out there that I think are options. And we're going to do an episode on one of them tomorrow, I think, whether this player is going to be that shutdown forward that hits this rating or not. But the Blue Jackets, I think, need to. I don't know that they have a third elite forward in the mix right now. Unless somebody takes a huge step forward and surprises everybody, I don't think they have a third elite forward right now. And so, again, what that means is you're going to have to push somebody up to be that shutdown forward. And again, whether that's Kent Johnson, whether that's Sean Monahan recovering his form, whether that is, whether Caden Lindstrom surprises everybody and turns into that kind of player, like there's potential answers, but I would love them to bring in, someone from, a different level, and again, someone on Twitter, someone says, they said, oh, there's not a shutdown forward. And someone says, well, is Coyle not a shutdown forward? And Dom says, well, the bar is way higher, right? A Reinhardt, a Mana, a Hagel. I don't think they have a Reinhardt, a Mana, or a Hagel in the system right now. Unfortunately, those players are really hard to find. Again, if I scroll through just the screenshots of the other teams that they've done so far. The examples of shutdown forwards: Matt Barzal, Nico Keisha. They've got Dylan Holloway for St. Louis. They have got Ryan O'Reilly for Nashville. They've got Sam Reinhart for the Florida Panthers. The Jets don't have one. They've got Matty Beniers for the Kraken. Calgary doesn't have one. They've got Mika Zibanejad for the Rangers. Chicago doesn't have one. Vancouver doesn't have one. The Sharks don't have one. The Leafs don't have one. And those are the ones that we've done so far, right? But like, again, when you look at the fact that someone like John Tavares, it doesn't count as a shutdown forward in terms of his rating, and he was really, really good for them this year. Matthew Nyes, also not an elite forward option for Toronto, right? Like, they've got Matthews and Nylander, and then a bunch of support guys, right? Those kind of guys are hard to find. So I don't know that the Blue Jackets have someone in the system like this. I would love if they did. And again, I would love to be surprised. Again, like the ideal world is that Ken Johnson becomes that third elite forward, right? He's not even going to be a shutdown guy, but I also don't necessarily, I guess Brandon Hagel does count as a shutdown guy. Kind of. They don't have a guy that's going to put up, 30 goals and also be good defensively right now. They can do it without that piece. They don't need that piece. But that, I think, is something that I would really like to add, is that someone that can kind of hover between that shutdown forward, scoring forward / support forward role that they have in the support core. Again, whether Johnson steps up, Voronkov steps up, whether they bring someone in from the outside, whether Monahan rebounds, and again, like, allows the opportunity to push other people up in the rankings. Like, there's a lot of moving parts. The Blue Jackets are not a finished piece by any stretch of the imagination, right? Like, again, even if you look at someone like the Florida Panthers, who basically missed the playoffs because injuries, etc., like, they've got 12 out of the 13 pieces. They're missing a star goalie. Bobrovsky was not very good for them this year, and if he rebounds, then they're in great position. If not, then they won't be. That's kind of what they should aspire to. And again, the Blue Jackets they're on the way, I think is where I'm at. They are on the way. They are very much not a finished piece. Will they reach the level that the Florida Panthers are at right now, having 12 out of 13? Or, I would say 11.5, because Seth Jones counts as a defensive franchise defenseman, but an offensive one. Whereas Werenski counts as both. Who can say? But they're in a good position right now. Would love to see them take a step forward. We'll see what happens this summer. But again, maybe I'm being too optimistic again. I can never decide if I'm being too optimistic or too much of a doomer. But looking at this, and I look at, again, how young someone like Adam Fantilli is, and Kirill Marchenko's still pretty young. A lot of their pieces are still pretty young. I feel pretty good that they're going to take steps forward. And that's promising. Again, a lot of it depends on, do they get surrounded with the right pieces? Does Don Waddell blow the rest of the salary cap on 30-plus-year-old veterans? Who can say? But they're not like one or two pieces away from immediately becoming a cup contender, right? But you look at this year's cup checklist versus last year's cup checklist, and I'll try and dig last year's cup checklist graphic out, and I'll post them up on Twitter at LO_Blue Jackets. They have improved massively from last year to this year. And so that, to me, says that they're headed in the right direction, which is good news, right? So overall, they're not close, but they are on the way. They've left the station, and they are on the tracks. I don't know. I'm going to stop the train metaphor before it gets away from me, but I feel pretty good about looking at this cup checklist versus looking at last year's cup checklist. So, hooray. That's all I've got for today. I think tomorrow, what I'm going to do is take a look at, I haven't decided which one I'm going to take a look at yet. I need to dig into it, but I'm either going to look at, should the Blue Jackets acquire Mason McTavish from the Anaheim Ducks, or should they acquire Matvei Michkov from the Flyers? I haven't decided that they should try and acquire either of them yet, but they're both disgruntled young players that are on the way out of their teams. Their age fits the timeline. I just haven't decided whether I think either of them would be a good fit in Columbus yet. So we're going to talk about both of them, not all in one episode, I don't think. So we'll talk about one of them tomorrow. I think probably Mason McTavish tomorrow, and then we'll talk about Matvei Michkov at a later date. But that's the plan for tomorrow. Thank you for listening to this episode, making it your first listen of the day every single day. Locked On Blue Jackets is free and available on all podcast platforms and over on YouTube. Again, you can find us on Twitter at LO_Blue Jackets. I think that's everything for my outro. Thank you once again for listening. We'll be back tomorrow. Until then, make sure you stay locked on.